of roadblocks. But we've got that because Canada wants to trade like with Europe, and Europe you can move people across those boundaries, and you can't do it in Canada. So the fair practices, professional stuff is happening. Again, it's a moment. It's an important moment. So let me finally say, if we can go to the last two slides. No, that's not it. Yes, okay. Here's what it looks like now in our system. We have escalators, and if you can get on them, they move you forward. We've got a terrific escalator called education and qualifications. We've got employment. If you can get a job, you can move ahead. If you're active in your community, you're on that escalator. The problem is, and Ray Ivany was someone who talked a lot about this, there's a lot of people who between themselves and the first level of that escalator have a river to cross, full of hazards, full of barriers. What we might begin to hope for is the next slide. And that is a much different set of escalators. You're not on it forever. You can get off it without having to go back to the bottom of the other. It looks a bit like an Escher print, but it's not. It isn't those stairways that go up and around and you end up in the same place. But it means that there's that variety, because that's what life is like. Who of us is on exactly the path we thought we'd be on, or our parents thought we'd be on? Well, I am. I said to our government colleague that, I'm a university professor. My father was a university professor. His father was a United Church minister. I mean, it's like a mining family where you go down the pits, except you're doing this. But life isn't like that anymore. Even for those who are... What's happened in the current crisis is a lot of people who thought they were across the river have been thrown back. They're off the escalator. We've got all that to deal with, and we're not going to deal with it by doing the same stuff we've always done. I hope that's helpful. I hope it's pithy. I look forward to the rest of the conversation, and I'm just delighted to be here. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Doug. Doug, I wonder if you'd stay at the podium for just a moment, and I invite any comments or questions from people. And we do have a roving mic. So who has a question or a comment they'd like to make from Doug?
Hold up your green cards.
Immigration. Yeah, it's the green card.
Oh, yeah.
Copies of those last two slides. Yeah, exactly.
They're on the web.
It's what? Yeah. Again, that was Mary's idea. She was the intellectual brains behind the whole Achieving Our Potential study, and she said from the beginning, we've got to have a way of conveying this graphically and visually. It just the heron will be animated and do various things. Some of them unmentionable. Yes.
You had mentioned yesterday about tuning, and I did some web searching last night, and it is very interesting. Yeah. And I wonder if there'll be any more space today to talk about the harmonization and tuning concept.
Well, just briefly, in the discussion yesterday, I think it was Susan Brown who said she talks to academics about asking them to articulate what it is they expect their students to have learned from their course. And that often academics take this as threatening, or they resist this notion, because academic life is so individualistic. You're in your own classroom. You do it whatever way you want to, and some of them do it wonderfully, and some of them don't. And I think the reason for some of the resistance is that all of that sounds like a uniformity, that we're going to catalog the things you must all have done. And a lot of the stuff, my reaction was very much the same to the first run at the National Vocational Qualifications grids in Britain. Those are now all being revised and broadened, much less micro pigeonholes to the key words here are harmonization, not standardization. and it's a music metaphor. People play different instruments, and they play them differently. But the end result is a harmonization. That makes a lot more sense. It's a more positive way. And the second thing is not equivalency, but comparability. Nobody's BA is the same as anybody else's BA. However much we try to figure out, and doing the box top number, how many of these will equate to how many of those? This is madness. But comparability. Just a brief example. We had one example of success at Dalhousie, which was the Master of Public Administration course for mid-career public servants. It happened not because Dalhousie has anything but conservative traditional bones in his body. The government said to the provincial government, said, we'll provide the funding for a new program because we got mid-career people who need to get ready to be senior managers when the retirement thing happens. And here's the conditions, we'll give you this money. It's got no residence requirement. We'll provide some time off, but they got to do it without abandoning their family and their work lives and blah, blah. It's got to be modularized, so you can get on and off in various ways. It's got to eventually be distance delivered, capable of distance delivery. And the fourth thing was, we got a whole lot of people, especially women, who came into the public service from high school as clerks and administrators, and they have worked their way up into positions of responsibility. And we've got to get them a master's degree. We've got to get them the opportunity to be considered for a master's degree when they don't have a BA. And wonder of wonders, with money on the table, what a surprise, Dalhousie said yes and came to us and said, can we develop an academic portfolio?
Great.
The answer to that was yes, but the interesting question was, the next obvious question was, well, what's your usual entrance requirement to the master's? A BA. In what? In anything, because we don't have any undergraduate programs in public administration. That meant we had to ask them, and they were former recent colleagues of mine, so this was, okay, guys, what do you expect a BA to be able to do? So they went through an exercise which produced a grid that Einstein couldn't manage. And because they were recent colleagues of mine, I was able to say, none of us would be able to get in to the program, us, the professors, if those were the standards. And so they then ratcheted down to a reasonable list of kinds of things that if you could demonstrate that in a variety of ways, yeah. And of course, the people have come in and done as well as anybody else, often better. And of course, Dalhousie has disassociated itself from us entirely and has pretended to the world that it has done no such thing, but it can be done, even there.
Great. Thank you, Doug. In response to your question, will there be more opportunity to talk about any of what's been introduced? This afternoon is an open space session, and so you will be able to set the agenda and determine where and how you want to put your focus. And certainly Doug is going to be available at lunch through the afternoon and all the time tomorrow to tap into his wisdom. Is there any other burning question before I give you some more time at the table? Questions? Any burning question or comment?
How well I'm looking?
Thank you, Doug. So, once again, thank you very much, Doug.